The conference room floated in orbit above Verdantis Prime, a crystalline station that housed the Galactic Council. Inside, representatives from 47 alien species sat in their designated seats. At the far end, isolated from the others, Ambassador Sora sat alone. The human woman kept her face calm, but she knew what they were saying. They always said the same things. "The humans are too dangerous," chittered Speaker Velthari, his insect-like mandibles clicking with each word. "They come from a world that kills for sport. Their planet tried to destroy them for millions of years, and somehow they survived." Sora had heard this speech before. 23 years ago, humanity had joined the Galactic Council. 23 years of being feared, avoided, and treated like bombs waiting to explode. She understood why. To the other species, Earth was a nightmare world. They called it a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planets ever discovered to harbor intelligent life. "Their gravity alone would crush most of us," added Representative Koth, a floating gas being contained in a protective sphere. "They breathe an atmosphere that's partially poison. Their weather kills thousands of them every year, and they simply accept it as normal." What the aliens didn't understand was that humans didn't see Earth as hostile. It was just home. Yes, earthquakes happened. Yes, hurricanes destroyed cities. Yes, there were animals that could kill a human with venom or claws or teeth. But humans adapted. They built stronger buildings. They learned to predict storms. They studied the dangerous animals and learned to avoid or defend against them. "I've seen their entertainment programs," said Council Member Thresh, shuddering with all 6 of his arms. "They intentionally hit each other for fun. They call it boxing and martial arts. They jump from flying vehicles with only fabric to slow their fall. They climb mountains that offer nothing but danger and death. They consume chemical toxins that would hospitalize our people, and they call it having drinks with friends." Sora wanted to laugh. If only they knew that humans considered those activities relaxing. She'd been a competitive martial artist before joining the diplomatic corps. The discipline and focus it taught her had made her better at her job, not worse. "And their military," Velthari continued, his voice dropping lower. "I've read the reports. Human soldiers undergo training that would be classified as torture for any other species. They force their bodies beyond biological limits. They practice warfare as if it's an art form. Their doctrine isn't just about winning battles, it's about breaking the enemy's will to fight." The room fell silent. This was the real fear. Not that humans were strong or tough or adaptable. The fear was that humans were good at war. Very good. In the 23 years since first contact, there had been 3 border conflicts involving human colonies. Each time, the aggressors had surrendered within days. The tales from those conflicts had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humans fought differently than other species. Most galactic conflicts were decided by superior technology and numbers. Battles happened in space, with ships firing at each other from safe distances. The idea of boarding an enemy vessel was considered insane. The idea of hand-to-hand combat was practically prehistoric. But humans excelled at both. They trained for close-quarters combat. They practiced boarding actions. They built weapons designed for fighting inside ships, in corridors, in rooms. And worst of all, they seemed to enjoy the challenge of it. Sora's communicator buzzed. She glanced down at the urgent message and felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't good. "Ambassador Sora," Velthari said, finally acknowledging her presence. "Do you have anything to say in humanity's defense?" Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and the massive viewing screen behind Velthari activated. The image showed a star map with 3 systems marked in crimson. "Speaker, we have an emergency transmission," announced the station's AI. 3 colony worlds on the galactic rim are under attack." The room erupted in panic. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. Velthari called for order, his voice amplified over the chaos. The screen changed to show footage from the battle. Sora watched with growing horror. Ships she didn't recognize tore through the Council's defense fleet like they were made of paper. These attackers were using tactics she'd never seen from any galactic species. They weren't just destroying ships, they were boarding them. The footage showed dark, insectoid creatures swarming through corridors, overwhelming defenders in close combat. "Who are they?" someone shouted. "Unknown," Velthari replied, his voice shaking. "Our forces are calling them the Void Reapers. They appeared without warning. Our fleet has suffered 60% casualties in the first engagement. They're boarding our ships and slaughtering the crews." Sora understood immediately why Velthari sounded so terrified. The galactic species weren't prepared for this kind of warfare. They'd built their military around ship-to-ship combat and orbital bombardment. They had protocols for civilized warfare. These Void Reapers didn't follow any rules. The council chamber fell silent as they watched the massacre on screen. Then, slowly, dozens of alien eyes turned toward Sora. She could see the fear in their faces, but also something else. Desperation. "Ambassador Sora," Velthari said quietly, "we need help. We need human military advisors. Just regular forces, not your special units. Please." The last word cost him. Sora could hear it in his voice. The proud speaker of the Galactic Council was begging humanity for help. The species they'd feared and isolated for over 2 decades was now their only hope. "I'll contact Earth immediately," Sora said, standing. "But I need to be honest with you, Speaker. I can't promise they'll only send regular forces. If the situation is as bad as it looks, Earth might send whoever they think is necessary." "Anything but your elite forces," Velthari pleaded. "We've heard the rumors. We know you have special units that even other humans fear. Please, Ambassador. We're not ready for that." Sora looked at the screen, watching as another council ship exploded. She thought about the Void Reapers boarding vessels and killing crews in close combat. She thought about human special forces, Ghost Unit, Reaper Company, the operators who trained in conditions that would kill normal people, the ones who ran toward danger instead of away from it. "I'll relay your request," she said. "But Speaker, if Earth sends their elite forces, it won't be to scare you. It'll be because they're the only ones who can stop this." She left the chamber, already composing the emergency message to Earth. Behind her, the council dissolved into frightened debates. They'd spent 23 years dreading humanity. Now they were about to learn the difference between regular humans and the very best humanity had to offer. On Earth, in the Unified Command Headquarters, Fleet Admiral Taeyang read Sora's message. He looked at the footage of the Void Reaper attacks. He read the Council's request for regular forces only. "Get me Ghost Unit," he said to his aide. "If the galaxy wants to survive, they're going to need our best. They're just going to have to deal with being terrified." The UNS Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Bastion 7, the forward command station where the Galactic Fleet had retreated to regroup. Inside the station's main docking bay, dozens of alien officers waited nervously. They'd been told human help was coming. What they hadn't been told was what kind of humans. Commander Hyunwoo was the first to step off the transport. He moved with an easy grace that made several of the watching aliens uncomfortable. Something about the way he carried himself reminded them of predators from their homeworlds. Behind him came 4 more humans, each carrying gear that looked too heavy for beings their size. Lieutenant Jiwon was next, her sharp eyes already cataloging every detail of the station. Then Sergeant Daejung, whose massive frame made even the largest aliens step back instinctively. Corporal Nari followed, moving so quietly that some aliens didn't notice her until she was right in front of them. Finally, Specialist Minho, who smiled pleasantly while carrying enough weapons to fight a small war. "Ghost Unit, reporting as ordered," Hyunwoo said, his voice calm and professional. He looked at the assembled alien commanders and saw the fear in their eyes. He was used to it. Marshal Thexnor, a reptilian being with deep blue scales, stepped forward. He was the commander of Bastion 7 and had faced combat on a dozen worlds. But standing before these 5 humans, he felt like prey facing a hunter. "Welcome to Bastion 7, Thexnor said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We've prepared quarters for you and scheduled a briefing in 1 hour. I hope your journey was comfortable." "It was fine," Hyunwoo replied. "We're ready to start immediately if you prefer. Ghost Unit doesn't need rest after a standard jump." The aliens exchanged worried glances. The jump from Earth had taken 6 days. Most species needed at least 12 hours of recovery time after such a journey. These humans looked like they were ready to run a marathon. The briefing room was designed to accommodate multiple species with varying gravity zones and atmosphere controls. Ghost Unit took their seats in the Earth Standard section, which the aliens noted was set to a gravity level that would slowly crush most of them over time. Intelligence Officer Velnoth, a crystalline being that glowed with soft blue light, began the presentation. She displayed holographic images of the Void Reapers and their attack patterns. They strike without warning, Velnoth explained. Their ships are biological in nature, grown rather than built. They use weapons we don't fully understand. But the worst part is their boarding tactics. They somehow breach our hulls and swarm inside, killing crews in close combat. We've lost 17 ships this way. Jiwon raised her hand. What countermeasures have you implemented for boarding defense? Velnoth's glow dimmed with embarrassment. We don't have specific protocols for that. Boarding actions haven't been part of galactic warfare for over 3,000 years. Our ships aren't designed to be defended from the inside. That's 17 critical mistakes already, Daejung said, not unkindly. No internal defense points, no sealed bulkheads, no fallback positions, no crew weapons training, no— We understand, Thexnor interrupted, his scales flushing darker with shame. This is why we called for human help. Your species has experience with this kind of warfare. We do, Hyunwoo confirmed, but we need complete tactical data. Ship schematics, engagement recordings, survivor testimonies, everything you have. Of course, Velnoth said. I'll have it sent to your quarters. No need, Jiwon said, pulling out a small device. Send it now. We'll review it during the meeting. The aliens watched in amazement as Jiwon's fingers flew across her device, processing information faster than their own computers. Within minutes, she was cross-referencing data, building probability models and identifying patterns. They're not random attacks, she announced. Look at the star chart. They're working their way towards something, expanding in a specific direction. Velnoth checked Jiwon's work, and her glow brightened with excitement. You're right. How did you see that so quickly? Pattern recognition, Jiwon replied simply. Humans are good at it. We had to be, back when we were hunting prey that didn't want to be found. The reminder that humans had evolved as hunters sent another ripple of unease through the alien observers. We should implement training exercises, Hyunwoo said. Your crews need to learn basic boarding defense. We can teach them. That would be appreciated, Thexnor said. Then, puffing up with pride, he added, Of course, we already have elite forces of our own. The Crimson Talons have never lost an engagement. Perhaps a joint training exercise would be beneficial. Hyunwoo and his team exchanged glances. Minho grinned. Sure, when do you want to start? 2 hours later, the training deck was packed with observers. Word had spread quickly that Ghost Unit would face the legendary Crimson Talons in a combat exercise. The Talons were 12 of the finest warriors in the galactic military, drawn from 6 different species. They'd trained together for years and moved like a single organism. Ghost Unit stood at one end of the training deck. 5 humans against 12 elite aliens. The aliens had lethal weapons set to training mode. They'd still hurt, but wouldn't cause permanent damage. Ghost Unit had training knives, their bare hands, and Minho carried a single training pistol. Standard rules, the referee announced. First team to neutralize all opponents wins. 3, 2, 1, begin. The Crimson Talons moved in perfect formation, exactly as they'd been trained. They advanced with overlapping fields of fire, covering each other professionally. It was textbook military tactics. Ghost Unit scattered. Nari was already moving before the starting signal finished, her body flowing across the deck like water. She reached the elevated position in 3 seconds, a climb that should have taken 15. From there, her training weapon marked 3 Talons before they even knew where she was. Daejung didn't bother with cover. He charged straight into the Talon formation like a freight train. His size and momentum scattered them, breaking their careful coordination. 2 Talons went down from impacts that the safety systems barely registered in time. Jiwon moved through the chaos like a ghost, appearing behind opponents and neutralizing them with precise strikes to nerve clusters she'd studied in alien anatomy files during the briefing. 3 more Talons fell. Hyunwoo fought the Talon commander in a blur of motion that was too fast for most observers to follow. The alien was good, very good, but Hyunwoo had trained in conditions that would have killed his opponent. The Talon commander went down. Minho never fired his pistol. He didn't need to. He moved through the remaining Talons with a combat knife, his other hand delivering strikes that were somehow gentle and devastating at the same time. As a medic, he knew exactly how much force to use. 4 minutes after it started, all 12 Crimson Talons were neutralized. Ghost Unit stood without a single injury. The training deck was completely silent. Then someone started a recording playback, and the observers watched the exercise again in slow motion. Even then, they could barely follow what the humans had done. "That was your elite force?" Daejung asked, not mocking, just curious. Thexnor couldn't speak. His scales had gone pale with shock. "It's okay," Minho said kindly. "You're not trained for this kind of combat. We can teach you. That's why we're here." That night, footage of the exercise spread across every galactic network. Billions of aliens watched as 5 humans dismantled 12 of the galaxy's finest warriors in 4 minutes. The commentary ranged from awe to terror to disbelief. In the command center, long-range sensors detected something new. A Void Reaper scouting fleet, 3 ships, moving through an outer system. Hyunwoo looked at the sensor data. "We need intelligence on their capabilities. Request permission for reconnaissance mission." "That's suicide," Velnoth said. "Those ships have destroyed everything we've sent against them." "You didn't send us," Nari pointed out. Thexnor wanted to refuse. He wanted to keep these terrifying humans somewhere safe where he could monitor them. But he needed the intelligence more than he needed peace of mind. "Permission granted," he said. "But we're sending a support task force with you." "To support us or to watch us?" Jiwon asked with a slight smile. "Both," Thexnor admitted. Hyunwoo nodded. "Fair enough. We'll take the Whisper. Prepare the hangar." As Ghost Unit left to prep their ship, the alien officers sat in stunned silence. "Those are their elite forces," Velnoth whispered. "If those 5 humans are this dangerous, what are regular humans like?" Nobody had an answer. They'd spent 23 years fearing humanity based on reputation and limited contact. Now they were realizing that fear had been completely justified, and the humans hadn't even been trying to scare them. In the hangar, Ghost Unit checked their gear. Nari ran her hands over her rifle with the care others might give a beloved pet. Daejung loaded ammunition that was technically illegal under 7 galactic treaties. Minho packed his medical supplies and 3 backup weapons. "They're terrified of us," Jiwon observed. "They should be," Hyunwoo said quietly. "But not because we want to hurt them. They should be terrified of what's coming. If the Void Reapers scare them this much, wait until they see what we do to things that threaten innocent people." The Whisper launched into the dark, carrying Ghost Unit toward enemy territory. Behind them, the aliens watched and wondered what they'd unleashed by calling for humanity's help. The Whisper moved through the debris field like a shadow through darkness. The human stealth ship was smaller than most galactic fighters, designed for infiltration rather than direct combat. Behind it, at a safe distance, the alien task force followed in their observation vessel, monitoring everything Ghost Unit did. Hyunwoo sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls as he navigated between chunks of destroyed ships. These were the remains of a galactic patrol that had encountered the Void Reapers 3 days ago. No survivors, no time to send a distress call, just wreckage floating in the endless dark. 3 contacts ahead, Nari reported from the sensor station. Reaper scout ships, holding position near that dead moon. They're just sitting there. "Waiting for something," Jiwon said, studying her displays. "Or guarding something." "We go in quiet," Hyunwoo decided. "Nari, find us an approach vector using the moon's gravity well. Daejung, prep the insertion pods. Minho, check the suits one more time." In the observation ship, Velnoth watched the humans prepare with growing anxiety. "They're actually going to board one of those ships," she said to her crew, "with 5 people." 4, her tactical officer corrected. Someone has to stay with their ship. They watched as Ghost Unit suited up. The human vac suits were disturbingly minimal compared to galactic standards. Where alien suits were bulky and heavily shielded, the human suits looked like thick clothing with helmets. The life support system seemed impossibly small. How long can they survive in those? Velnoth asked. According to their specifications, about 4 hours, her technical officer replied. But that's in optimal conditions. One tear, one failure, and they're dead in seconds. They know that, Velnoth whispered. They know. And they're doing it anyway. The whisper released 4 small pods, each barely large enough to hold a human. Inside her pod, Nari felt the familiar sensation of zero-gravity drift. She'd done this kind of insertion dozens of times, but it never stopped being uncomfortable. The pod had no engines, no guidance system. It was just a stealth shell that radar couldn't detect. She would drift for 20 minutes before reaching the target ship. 20 minutes alone in the dark, knowing that if she missed the ship, she'd float away forever. Most species would panic. Nari used the time to review the mission plan and check her weapons. She counted her breaths, keeping her heart rate slow and steady. This was just another job. The pods latched onto the Reaper ship's hull with magnetic clamps that were silent and gentle. Through their suit cameras, the observation ship watched as Ghost Unit used cutting tools to breach the organic hull. The material was unlike anything in galactic databases. Part metal, part biological matter, grown rather than manufactured. We're inside, Hyunwoo transmitted. The interior is breathable for humans, but high in methane. Lighting is minimal, mostly in the infrared spectrum. Can you see? Velnoth asked. Our suits compensate, Jiwon replied. Actually, this is easier than some places we've trained. At least it's not actively on fire. The aliens didn't know if she was joking. Ghost Unit moved through the ship's corridors in tactical formation. The walls were organic, pulsing slightly as if breathing. The floor had a texture like rough skin. Everything about the ship felt alive, which made sense if it was actually grown. Movement ahead, Daejung reported. 2 contacts, possibly patrolling. They pressed against the walls, waiting. The Void Reapers came around the corner, and the aliens watching gasped. The creatures were insectoid, about 7 feet tall, with 4 arms ending in blade-like appendages. Their bodies were armored with natural chitin that looked thicker than most ship hulls. Their heads had no visible eyes but clusters of sensory organs that twitched and moved constantly. The Reapers walked past Ghost Unit's position without detecting them. The humans were that still, that silent. Did you see those blades? One of the alien observers said. They're natural weapons. That species evolved for killing. Once the patrol passed, Ghost Unit continued deeper into the ship. They found what looked like a command center, a chamber where biological computers pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Jiwon approached carefully, scanning everything with her equipment. This is fascinating, she whispered. The ship's systems are all biological. It's like a giant organism with the ship as its body, and these Reapers as its white blood cells. Can you access their data? Hyunwoo asked. I can try. Give me 5 minutes. While Jiwon worked, the rest of Ghost Unit secured the room. Minho found storage areas containing organic matter that might be food. Daejung discovered what looked like sleeping chambers where Reapers could rest. Nari watched the corridors, her rifle ready. Got it, Jiwon announced. I'm patching into their communication system. It's not language-based. They use pheromones and chemical signals. But the ship itself records data differently. I can read it. She worked quickly, downloading everything she could access. What she found made her blood run cold. Hyunwoo, we have a problem. These aren't raiders or invaders. They're defenders. Explain. There's a queen ship, massive, hidden in something they call the Void Sector. She's preparing to spawn. When she does, she'll produce billions of these warrior-class Reapers. The attacks on Council worlds weren't invasions. They were the Reapers clearing a perimeter around their breeding ground. How long until she spawns? Hyunwoo asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. In the observation ship, Velnoth felt her crystal structure grow cold. Billions of warriors. The galaxy couldn't stop thousands. How could they fight billions? We need to get this information back, Hyunwoo said. Jiwon, grab what you can. We're leaving in 2 minutes. That's when the alarm started. The ship's walls pulsed red. Somewhere in the distance, a sound like a scream echoed through the corridors. The Reapers had detected the intrusion. Move, Hyunwoo ordered. Ghost Unit ran through the corridors, retracing their path to the extraction point. But the ship itself was working against them. Doors that had been open were now closed. Walls shifted, trying to trap them. The biological ship was defending itself. They reached an intersection and found it blocked by 12 Reaper warriors. In the confined space, there was nowhere to dodge, nowhere to maneuver. Just 20 feet of corridor between Ghost Unit and a dozen blade-armed aliens that existed to kill. Daejung, breach, Hyunwoo shouted. Daejung fired a weapon that most species would classify as a war crime. The explosive round punched through the Reapers and the wall behind them, creating a new path. Ghost Unit dove through the hole, emerging into a large chamber that spun slowly. They'd reached a section with rotational gravity. The fight that followed was chaos. Reapers poured into the chamber from multiple access points. In the spinning gravity, up and down became meaningless. Ghost Unit adapted instantly, using their training in three-dimensional combat. Nari found purchase on a wall that was now the floor and began taking precise shots. Each round hit a Reaper in the gaps of their armor, in the joints where chitin couldn't protect them. Watching her work was like watching an artist paint. Daejung became the anchor point. His mass and strength letting him control his position despite the spinning room. He fired bursts from his heavy weapon, each shot calculated to hit Reapers without penetrating the hull and exposing them all to space. Jiwon moved like water, using the rotation to build momentum for strikes that shouldn't have been possible from someone her size. She'd studied Reaper anatomy during the data download and knew exactly where to hit to disable them. Minho fought while simultaneously treating his team. When Nari took a glancing blow from a Reaper blade that cut through her suit arm, Minho was there in seconds with emergency sealant and combat drugs to keep her fighting despite the injury. Hyunwoo fought at the front, drawing the most aggressive Reapers toward him and away from his team. He moved with a precision that came from thousands of hours of training in worse conditions than this. Every move had a purpose. Every strike was efficient. They fought their way to the breach point where their pods waited. Daejung provided covering fire while the others boarded. He was the last in, firing until the door sealed behind him. The pods launched, drifting away from the Reaper ship as it powered up weapon systems. They were too small and quiet for the ship to track effectively. Within 10 minutes, they were back aboard the Whisper. Medical now, Minho ordered, pulling Nari toward the small treatment area. That cut went deeper than I thought. I'm fine, Nari protested, though her face was pale. You're bleeding into your suit. Sit down. While Minho worked on Nari, Hyunwoo piloted them away from the Reaper ships. The observation vessel followed, its crew shocked into silence by what they'd witnessed. Did they just, one alien officer started. They boarded an enemy ship, fought their way through hostile forces in rotating gravity, and extracted with minimal casualties, Velnoth finished. Yes, that's exactly what they did. In 45 minutes. Back aboard the Whisper, Jiwon compiled her findings. The data she'd stolen from the Reaper ship contained everything: ship capabilities, warrior classifications, breeding cycles, and most importantly, the location of the Queen ship. This is bad, she said, reviewing the information. The Queen ship is the size of a small moon. She's protected by thousands of warrior vessels, and she's already beginning the spawning process. Can we stop it? Hyunwoo asked. Only one way, Jiwon replied. Direct assault on the Queen. If we kill her, the hive collapses. The warriors are all connected to her through some kind of biological link. She dies. They all shut down. So we need to get onto a moon-sized living ship, fight through thousands of defenders, and kill a queen that's probably the most protected thing in the galaxy, Daejung summarized. Sounds like Tuesday. In the medical area, Nari laughed despite her injury. I was thinking it sounds like a Wednesday. Tuesday we usually have easier missions. Minho finished sealing her wound. Hold still. And yes, this is definitely a Wednesday-level problem. The Whisper docked at Bastion 7 6 hours later. Ghost Unit emerged to find a crowd of alien officers waiting. Hyunwoo downloaded all their data to the command network and prepared his report. "We found their breeding ground," he announced. "We know how to stop them, but it's not going to be easy." "Define not easy," Thexnor requested. "We need to assault a fortified position defended by thousands of hostiles, penetrate multiple layers of biological armor, reach the central chamber, and neutralize the primary target before she completes her spawning cycle." The aliens stared at him. "That's impossible," Velnoth whispered. Hyunwoo looked at his team. They looked tired, battered, and Nari was still bandaged. But he saw no fear in their eyes. "It would be impossible," he agreed, "if we were going alone. That's why we need more humans." The transport ships arrived at Bastion 7 over the course of 3 days, each one carrying more humans. The alien officers watched with growing unease as 200 additional human operators disembarked. These weren't regular soldiers. These were specialists, each one trained for the kind of warfare that made the galaxy uncomfortable. Captain Yuna commanded Reaper Company, Marines who specialized in hostile environment combat. She was shorter than Hyunwoo, but moved with the same dangerous grace. Her people wore armor painted flat black, with no insignia, no decorations, nothing to catch the light or draw attention. Major Taman led Wraith Squadron, pilots who flew missions that other humans called dangerous and aliens called suicide. His flight suit had patches from 17 different campaigns, each one representing a battle where he'd done the impossible and survived. Chief Engineer Hana arrived last, carrying cases of equipment that the aliens didn't recognize and probably didn't want to understand. She had a friendly smile that somehow made her more intimidating, not less. "The gang's all here," Daejung said, greeting Yuna with a handshake that would have broken most alien appendages. "Ready for a Wednesday-level problem?" "Born ready," Yuna replied. "Brief me." They gathered in the largest conference room Bastion 7 had. 200 humans and twice as many aliens, all studying holographic displays of the Queen ship. The image rotated slowly, showing a vessel that defied conventional classification. It wasn't just large, it was a small moon converted into a living warship. "The outer hull is 3 kilometers thick," Jiwon explained, pointing to different sections. "Biological armor constantly regenerating. Conventional weapons won't penetrate it. The interior is a maze of corridors, chambers, and defensive positions. We estimate 10,000 warrior-class Reapers aboard, with more spawning every hour." "The Queen is here," Hyunwoo continued, highlighting the center of the vessel. "Deep in the core, in a chamber the size of a city block. She's the command nexus for the entire Reaper species. Kill her, and the warriors lose coordination. They'll shut down within hours. So we just need to fly into the most defended position in known space, fight through thousands of enemies, and kill something the size of a building," Taman said cheerfully. "I've had worse Tuesdays." "Wednesday," several operators corrected simultaneously. The aliens listened to this exchange with confusion. Were the humans joking? They seemed serious. But they were talking about a suicide mission as if it were routine. "Three-phase operation," Yuna said, taking over the briefing. "Phase 1, Wraith Squadron engages the Reaper Defense Fleet, draws them away from the Queen ship. You'll need to keep them busy for at least 30 minutes. "We can do 40, Taman replied. "Longer if you need it." 30 is fine. Phase 2. Reaper Company breaches the hull and establishes entry points. We'll use boarding torpedoes to punch through the outer armor. Once inside, we hold corridors and create a perimeter. Phase 3, Hyunwoo finished. Ghost unit infiltrates to the Queen's chamber. Hana has created a biological weapon that will shut down the Queen's neural system. We plant it, we get out, mission complete. "What's the estimated casualty rate?" Thexnor asked quietly. The humans exchanged glances. Finally, Yuna answered. "High. Maybe 40%. This is a hard target." The aliens were horrified. 40% casualties would be considered catastrophic in galactic military terms. It was the kind of loss that ended campaigns and toppled governments. But the humans were discussing it matter-of-factly, as if it were acceptable. "We can't ask you to take those losses," Velnoth protested. "There must be another way." "There isn't," Hyunwoo said gently. "We've run every simulation. This is the best plan we have. And those casualties are acceptable because the alternative is worse. If the queen spawns, billions die. If 40% of us can prevent that, it's a trade worth making. That night, the aliens observed something they didn't understand. The humans gathered in one of the station's larger recreational areas and prepared food together. Jiwon had somehow acquired ingredients for traditional Korean dishes, and she cooked while others talked, laughed, and shared stories. "This is your pre-mission ritual?" Velnoth asked, watching from the doorway. "Part of it," Minho replied, stirring a large pot of stew. "We eat together, share time with friends. Tomorrow might be our last day, so today needs to be good." "You're not afraid?" "Of course we're afraid," Nari said, from where she was carefully slicing vegetables with one hand. Her injured arm was still healing. "Fear is normal. We just don't let it stop us." Daejung laughed. "Besides, we've trained for worse than this. Remember the Arctic survival course? -40 degrees, 3 weeks, minimal supplies?" "That was character building," Yuna said with a grin. "Unlike tomorrow, which will just be regular work." The aliens couldn't understand it. These humans were facing likely death in less than 24 hours, and they were cooking dinner and joking with each other. It wasn't bravado or false courage. They genuinely seemed to be at peace with what was coming. "How do you do it?" Velnoth asked. "How do you face death so calmly?" Hyunwoo looked up from where he was helping set tables. "We face it by living first. Death is inevitable for everyone. But life, good life, shared with people who matter, that's something we can control. So we cook together, eat together, remember why we're fighting. Not because we're not afraid of dying, but because we love living." The next morning, Wraith Squadron launched first. 20 human fighters against over 300 Reaper vessels. The tactical displays showed the fighters scattering in all directions, each one drawing enemies away from the Queen ship. In the command center, alien officers watched in amazement as Taemon's voice came through the comms, calm and professional, even as his fighter pulled maneuvers that should have been impossible. "Wraith 3, you've got 2 on your tail." "Copy that, Wraith leader. Breaking left, going vertical." The fighter spun through a debris field, using chunks of destroyed ships as cover. The pursuing Reapers tried to follow, but lost sight of their target in the chaos. One crashed into debris. The other took fire from Wraith 5, who'd circled around behind them. "This is insane," an alien tactical officer whispered. "They're outnumbered 15-1. "They're not trying to win," Thexnor realized. "They're trying to survive and keep the Reapers busy. Look at their patterns. They're not engaging directly, they're dancing around the enemy, making themselves targets that can't be caught." It was working. The Reaper fleet, bred for aggression, couldn't resist chasing the fighters. They pulled away from the Queen ship, pursuing what seemed like easy prey but never quite catching them. While the Reapers were distracted, Reaper Company launched their assault. The boarding torpedoes were exactly what they sounded like, armored missiles with humans inside. They accelerated toward the Queen ship at speeds that would kill most species from the G-forces alone. Inside her torpedo, Yuna counted down the seconds until impact. The deceleration would be brutal, even with the dampeners. But that was fine. Reaper Company trained in conditions that most species considered lethal. This was just another day at work. The torpedoes hit the Queen ship's hull with impacts that registered on sensors across the sector. They burrowed deep into the biological armor, their drill bits spinning at thousands of rotations per minute. Inside, the Marines waited in darkness, feeling the torpedo shake and shudder. Then the hatches blew open, and Reaper Company poured into the Queen ship. The fighting was immediate and brutal. Reaper warriors rushed toward the breach points, only to meet humans who'd trained their entire adult lives for exactly this scenario. The corridors were narrow, the lighting was poor, and the air was filled with the scent of alien biology. Perfect conditions for human close-quarters combat. Yuna's squad moved as a unit, each Marine covering angles and watching for threats. When Reapers appeared, the humans engaged with practiced efficiency. Weapons fire echoed through biological corridors. Blades clashed against armor. It was ugly, violent work, and humans were very good at it. "Perimeter established," Yuna reported. "Ghost unit, you have a path." Ghost Unit moved through the chaos, navigating corridors filled with combat. They were heading deeper into the ship while Reaper Company held the outer sections. The Marines would buy them time with their lives if necessary. The journey to the Queen's chamber took 20 minutes that felt like hours. They encountered Reaper patrols and fought through them. They navigated sections of the ship that were actively hostile, with walls that tried to close on them and floors that opened into deadly drops. Environmental hazards increasing, Minho reported, checking his suit sensors. Temperature is swinging between -100 and +200 Celsius. Atmospheric pressure is fluctuating. Gravity is, wait, it just reversed. They adapted, using equipment and training designed for exactly these conditions. When gravity reversed, they simply reoriented and kept moving. When temperature spiked, their suits compensated. Nothing stopped them. The Queen's chamber was vast, a biological cathedral built by evolution and need. The Queen herself was beyond massive, her body taking up most of the space. She pulsed with life, already beginning the spawning process. Around her, Guardian-class Reapers stood watch, bigger, stronger, and more heavily armored than the warriors they'd fought so far. "Hana," Hyunwoo said calmly, "how close do we need to be?" "The weapon needs to be planted directly on her neural cluster." Hana's voice came through their comms from the whisper. "It's at the base of her main body, protected by those guardians." "Of course it is," Nari muttered, bringing her rifle up. "Nothing's ever easy." The fight was the hardest Ghost Unit had ever faced. The Guardians were purpose-built to protect the Queen, and they did their job with terrible efficiency. Daejong held a choke point alone, his heavy weapon firing continuous bursts until the barrel glowed red-hot. Minho was everywhere at once, keeping his team fighting through injuries that should have dropped them. Nari, despite her wounded arm, made shot after impossible shot. Each one hit exactly where she aimed, finding the microscopic gaps in Guardian armor. She ran out of ammunition and switched to backup weapons without missing a beat. Jiwon used everything she'd learned about Reaper biology, targeting weak points and vulnerable systems. She moved through the battle like a surgeon, each strike precise and devastating. Hyunwoo fought at the front, drawing Guardian attention and creating openings for his team. He took hits that cracked his armor, suffered wounds that would have killed him without Minho's immediate treatment, and kept moving forward. Finally, bloodied and exhausted, they reached the Queen's neural cluster. Hyunwoo placed Hana's weapon directly against the biological mass and activated it. "Weapon deployed," he reported. "Time to go." "Exit routes are blocked," Jiwon said, checking her tactical display. "Reaper forces are converging on our position." They were trapped. Then, Yuna's voice cut through the comms. "Hold on, we're coming to you." Reaper Company had heard Ghost Unit's situation and made a decision. They abandoned their defensive positions and pushed into the Queen ship's interior, fighting through corridors thick with enemies. Marines fell, but others pushed forward, creating a path through sheer determination and firepower. They reached Ghost Unit just as the weapon activated, sending cascading shutdowns through the Queen's nervous system. The Guardians around them suddenly went still, then collapsed. "Move," Yuna ordered. Both units ran through dying corridors as the entire ship began to fail. The Queen's death was causing a systemic collapse. They reached the extraction point where other Marines held the perimeter, fighting desperately to keep the route open. "Last evac ship is waiting," a Marine reported, "but we're out of time." They loaded the wounded first, then the others. Hyunwoo did a head count and felt his stomach drop. They'd started with 205 humans. He counted 132. 73 casualties. More than he'd hoped, fewer than he'd feared. The transport ship pulled away from the Queen ship just as the biological vessel began its final death spasms. Through the viewports, they watched as it collapsed in on itself, taking the Reaper defense fleet with it. Across known space, Reaper warriors simply stopped functioning, their connection to the Queen severed. The war was over. In the transport's cargo bay, Ghost Unit sat in silence. They'd won. They'd saved the galaxy. But the cost was written on their faces and in their hearts. 73, Yuna said quietly, checking the casualty list. They knew the risks, Hyunwoo replied, his voice rough. They went anyway. That's what makes them heroes, Nari added, cradling her injured arm. The transport headed back to Bastion 7, carrying the survivors of humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not fearlessness, but the courage to act despite fear. 2 weeks after the battle, Bastion 7 held a memorial service. The main hangar had been converted into a gathering space where thousands of beings from across the galaxy came to pay respects. At the center, 73 memorial plaques displayed the names of humans who had died in the assault on the Queen ship. Captain Yuna stood at the podium, looking out at the massive crowd. She wore her dress uniform, the one she'd hoped never to wear for this purpose. Behind her, the surviving members of Reaper Company and Ghost Unit stood in formation. Many wore bandages, some leaned on supports. All stood straight. We're here to remember 73 people, Yuna began, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. 73 humans who made a choice. They knew the mission was dangerous. They knew they might not come back. They went anyway. She paused, looking at the memorial plaques. Each one represented someone she'd known, someone she'd trained with, someone who'd shared meals and stories and hopes for the future. In galactic military tradition, you honor the fallen by mourning their loss. That's appropriate and right. But in human tradition, we honor them differently. We honor them by celebrating what they chose to do. They didn't die in fear. They lived without it. They saw people who needed help and they ran toward danger instead of away from it. That's not tragedy. That's heroism. The aliens in the audience shifted uncomfortably. They were learning that humans process death differently than they did. For most galactic species, death was the ultimate failure, something to be avoided at all costs. But humans seemed to see it as an acceptable price for protecting others. These 73 people saved billions of lives, Yuna continued. They saved worlds. They saved species. They saved a galaxy that had spent 23 years being afraid of humanity. And they did it because that's what humans do when others need help. We show up, we do the work, we pay the price. She stepped back from the podium. Around the hangar, human operators saluted their fallen comrades. The gesture was simple but profound. The aliens watched and tried to understand. After the ceremony, Ambassador Sora met with Council Speaker Velthari in a private conference room. The insect-like alien looked tired, his mandibles clicking softly in what Sora had learned was a sign of stress. Ambassador, the Council owes humanity an apology, Velthari said. For 23 years, we treated your people as threats. We isolated you, feared you, and refused to truly understand you. We were wrong. You weren't wrong to be afraid, Sora replied gently. Humans are dangerous. We came from a death world, and it shaped us into survivors. But what you misunderstood was why we're dangerous. You thought it was because we enjoy violence or seek conflict. The truth is simpler and sadder. We're dangerous because we learn to face terrible things, and sometimes facing terrible things is exactly what's needed. Your elite forces, Velthari said, the words heavy with meaning. Ghost Unit, Reaper Company, Wraith Squadron. We asked for regular troops because we thought your elite forces would be uncontrollable, unstoppable, terrifying. And were they? Yes, but not in the way we expected. They were terrifying because they chose to walk into death for people they'd never met. They were unstoppable because they refused to accept failure when lives were at stake. And they were uncontrollable because no force in the universe could have stopped them from doing what they believed was right. Sora smiled. Now you're beginning to understand. In the medical bay, Nari sat while a doctor examined her healing arm. The wound was closing nicely, though she'd have a scar that would last the rest of her life. She didn't mind. Every operator she knew had scars. They were proof that you'd survived something difficult. The alien medical staff wants to study human healing, the doctor said, a hint of amusement in his voice. They're amazed at how quickly you recover from injuries that would cripple their people. It's just Earth biology, Nari replied. We evolved to heal from injuries because injuries were common. You can't survive a death world if a broken bone means death. Still, they're impressed. The entire station is impressed, actually. There's talk of creating a joint training program. Aliens learning from human instructors. That could be good, Nari said thoughtfully. But they need to understand. We can't make them human. We can teach techniques and tactics, but courage isn't something you learn. It's something you choose. Across the station, G1 was giving a presentation to a room full of xenobiologists and military strategists. The holographic display behind her showed images of Earth, its storms, its predators, its disasters. This is where humanity came from, she explained. A world that tried to kill us every day. Earthquakes destroyed our cities, diseases killed millions, predators hunted us. Storms wiped out entire populations. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was normal. An alien in the audience raised a tentacle. How did you survive? By adapting, by learning, by refusing to give up. Humans aren't stronger than Earth's predators. We learn to make tools. We aren't faster. We learned to track prey over long distances until they collapsed from exhaustion. We couldn't survive Earth's weather, so we learned to build shelters and make clothing. Every challenge made us better at surviving the next challenge. And this made you warriors? No, Jiwan corrected. This made us survivors. But survival often requires facing danger. So we got good at that too. What you call elite forces are simply humans who refined those survival skills into a discipline. Ghost Unit isn't special because we're superhuman. We're special because we chose to take our survival instincts and use them to protect others. The presentation sparked discussions across the galactic networks. For the first time, aliens were trying to truly understand humanity instead of just fearing them. The conversations weren't always comfortable, but they were honest. Commander Yunwoo spent his days writing reports and recommendations for the Council. They'd asked for his assessment of galactic military readiness, and he gave it to them straight. Your technology is excellent, he wrote in one report. Your ships are well designed, your weapons are effective, and your logistics are sophisticated. But your doctrine is built on the assumption that warfare is about technology and numbers. The Void Reapers proved that assumption wrong. Sometimes warfare is about will, about determination, about being willing to pay costs that seem unacceptable. The Council didn't like reading it, but they needed to hear it. In a smaller meeting, Hyunwoo sat with Velthari and Marshal Thexnor, discussing the future. The Council wants to establish exchange programs, Velthari explained. Human military advisors stationed with galactic forces, not to command them, but to train them, to teach them what humans know about courage and determination. That's a good start, Hyunwoo agreed. But understand, we can't turn your people into humans. Different species will approach courage differently. What we can teach is how to face fear instead of avoiding it. Some of your people have already volunteered, Thexnor said. Corporal Nari has agreed to train Council snipers. Sergeants Daejung and Minho are establishing a cross-training program for Marines. Captain Yuna is being promoted to general and will oversee human-alien military cooperation. And Major Taemin? He's starting a pilot exchange program. Some of our best pilots will train with Wraith Squadron. Though, Thexnor added with something like humor, we expect many will quit when they realize what humans consider standard flying procedures. Hyunwoo smiled. Probably. But the ones who stick with it will be better pilots. 6 months later, the changes were visible across the galaxy. Human operators worked alongside alien forces, not as commanders, but as partners and instructors. The training programs were brutal by galactic standards. Humans didn't believe in making things easy, but they produced results. The Council Military Academy added a new wing called the Ghost Wing, where elite operators from all species trained together. The human instructors taught tactics, techniques, and procedures, but more importantly, they taught mindset. Fear is your friend, Nari told a class of alien snipers. Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you careful. Fear keeps you alive. The problem isn't feeling fear. The problem is letting fear stop you from doing what needs to be done. In the simulator rooms, Taemin put alien pilots through flight scenarios that seemed impossible. Most failed repeatedly. But slowly, they began to understand what he was teaching. That impossible often just meant difficult and dangerous, not actually impossible. Daejung ran Marines through close-quarters combat drills that left them exhausted and frustrated. But when they complained, he simply said, If training is too easy, it's not training, it's just exercise. Training should push you beyond what you think you can do. That's how you discover you're capable of more. The changes weren't just military. Civilian programs emerged where humans taught aliens about persistence hunting, endurance running, and other activities that showcased human capabilities. Adventure tourism companies offered death world experiences where aliens could safely experience conditions similar to Earth. Most lasted less than an hour before tapping out, gaining a new appreciation for what humans considered normal. Hyunwoo and Jiwon received new orders from Earth. The Council had a diplomatic crisis brewing, an aggressive species threatening war over resource disputes. The Council wanted human negotiators, people who could stand firm against intimidation. "They're learning," Jiwon observed as they reviewed the orders. 6 months ago, they only called us for military problems. Now they're realizing that human traits, determination, refusing to back down, facing difficult situations, apply to more than just combat. "It's progress," Hyunwoo agreed. "The galaxy is starting to understand that human elite forces aren't just about fighting. We're about doing whatever needs to be done, even when it's hard." On Earth, at Ghost Unit headquarters, new recruits underwent selection. An unusual observer watched the process, Council Speaker Velthari himself, who'd requested permission to study human military training. He watched candidates push themselves through physical challenges that seemed designed to break bodies. He watched instructors create scenarios where there was no good choice, only terrible options and worse ones. He watched candidates fail, recover, and try again. "Why do you make it so difficult?" he asked the selection officer. "Because reality is difficult," came the reply. "If we make selection easy, we produce operators who can't handle hard missions. The difficulty isn't cruelty, it's preparation. We're finding people who won't quit when things get terrible. Because on real missions, things always get terrible." Velthari was writing a report for the Council, titled "Understanding Humanity's Excellence." As he watched the candidates struggle through another evolution, he added a final section. "For 23 years, we feared the humans we hadn't met. We created stories about their violence, their aggression, their danger. We were right to recognize they were dangerous. We were wrong about why. Humans aren't dangerous because they seek violence. They're dangerous because they refuse to accept defeat. They came from a world that tried to kill them, and they decided to survive anyway. That determination, that refusal to quit, that courage to face impossible odds, that's what makes them excellent. We don't need to become human, but we need to learn from them. We need to find our own courage, our own determination, our own willingness to face hard truths and difficult challenges. The galaxy doesn't need more humans. It needs more of what humans show us is possible. The choice to stand up when it's easier to stay down, to move forward when it's safer to retreat, to protect others even when it costs everything. That's the real lesson of Ghost Unit, Reaper Company, and all the humans who fought to save us. Excellence isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite fear. It's about choosing courage over comfort. It's about doing what's right even when what's right is terribly, impossibly hard. The 73 humans who died ending the Void Reaper War showed us this. They made a choice, and in doing so, they taught an entire galaxy that courage is always a choice. We can choose it too. 10 years after the Void Reaper War, the memorial at Bastion 7 had grown. New plaques had been added, aliens who'd died in the service of others, who'd learned human lessons about courage and applied them in their own ways. The memorial wasn't just for humans anymore. It was for anyone who'd chosen to face fear instead of running from it. At the base of the memorial, a quote from Commander Hyunwoo was engraved in 48 languages. "Excellence isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite fear. The galaxy doesn't need more humans. It needs more courage." Cadets from dozens of species walked past the memorial every day. Most paused to read the names and the quote. Some left small tokens of respect. All of them understood, in ways the galaxy hadn't understood a decade before, that the humans hadn't come to conquer or threaten. They'd come to show what was possible when you refused to let fear win. The galaxy had dreaded humanity. Then they met the elite forces. And in meeting them, they learned that the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence. It was their capacity for courage and their willingness to share it with anyone brave enough to learn.